Here we go.
Well, we know that we are between you and lunch, so I want to take a few minutes for these two extraordinary souls to introduce themselves. Michael, why don't you start?
Hi, I'm Michael Dean, one of the founding partners at AgFunder. We're a global venture capital platform. We have almost 300 million assets under management, made about 180 investments since we launched our first fund in 2018.
Olympia, Yarger, founder and CEO of Goterra. We're waste management infrastructure technology based in Canberra, but in 5 states now.
So, as you've heard over the last couple of days, there are plenty of things wrong. We have inherited a food system, an agricultural system, fisheries, the whole thing, that is in dire need of rethinking, reimagining, rebuilding, regenerating. And these two extraordinary souls have basically spent their careers doing just that. Michael, I'm going to start with you because I think AgFunder was sort of an early pioneer in this space. Prior to the launch of AgFunder and the work that you guys now have done to really help fund this ecosystem, what was the moment that you had where you were sort of laying there, where we have these moments where, this information is tough. It's tough to hear this all the time, where you were laying there at night and you're just thinking, like, what am I going to do? What is it that I'm going to do? What was that moment for you?
So AgFunder started back, we had our 10-year anniversary last year, actually. And I'd been a lawyer for many years, and I wanted to do something with more impact. So I left that and started an agri-business in West Africa, of all places, and spent 4 years building this agri-business. We were producing sunflower oil in Burkina Faso and Mali. And Rob Leclerc, my co-founder at AgFunder, had joined me. He'd left academia. And unfortunately, there was a coup in Mali in 2012. And the private equity that we'd lined up to roll this project out, and it was quite a big project, sort of disappeared when the French sent their troops in to quell this uprising. And we was just sort of left with nothing to do. We'd lost our business. But we'd seen some very nascent sort of digitization coming into agriculture, weather forecasting, things like that. And whilst Big Ag had been, developing strains of different genetics in seeds and plants, and obviously Big Chem were innovating. It was our thesis that there would be this wave of digitization, this new wave of innovation that was going to come to agriculture. We'd seen it happen in the financial services, in the health sector. We'd seen it in hospitality, even obviously the military. There's a lot of technology that was ripe for adoption in other markets. And so it was our thesis that this was coming to agriculture. So we started AgFunder News, which is probably how we're best known. Mm-hmm. And that was literally just Rob and I writing blog posts about tech that we'd seen. Then we employed Louisa Taylor, who really sort of took it to another level, and she's sort of the heart and soul of our business. Then we hired some engineers to come in and help capture the data that we were seeing. We were getting access and building our network, and that was at that point we sort of realised that we really had a lot of data and a lot of access and a very, very large network from which to launch a fund, our first fund. And that's what we did, and it was a very small fund. We just went to our readers, AgFunder News readers, and said, look, we're seeing a lot of really interesting technologies. We want to invest in them. Who wants to join us? And that's how we started. So it was really about trying to add money to what we were already doing and trying to raise the literacy of investors around what was happening in technology and agriculture and food.
Yeah, and you also did a really good job of listening. You were listening. You were out there as a news service, and then you realized that here you were pushing something out, and what was actually happening was you were getting something back. And then from there, you saw the need for the fund. Olympia, food waste is an issue that is so dear to my heart. I think that it is something that, whether you hear from the USDA in the United States or the United Nations, that 30 to 40% of the food that we are producing is wasted. And you think of all of the resources that are wasted in that process, the farmer's time, the farmer's life, the family life, the air, the soil, the water. There's so much that we are literally just treating in such an irresponsible way. What was it for you that brought you to that space to then to really launch Goterra into the platform that it's become today?
Yeah, I didn't want to be a maggot farmer, weirdly. I just wanted to stay in agriculture, and I came from conventional agriculture, sheep and cattle. When I came back to Australia after 14 years in the US, I couldn't find a way to get a conventional farming model to work without food costs impacting the business in a way that made it feel like I was going to have to work on farm. And that is as much a conversation about my own equity and sort of wealth as it is about the challenges of agriculture today. And so I think, I started looking for sustainable ways to feed a livestock enterprise that didn't have the volatility of market forces impacting the cost of production. I found insects, and so this concept that, if we're trying to solve this 2050 problem of feeding the world, but we have only finite resources in that supply chain, then somehow you have to add to the supply chain, and where will the adding come from? And insects at the time, 2015 or so, it was the first generation of insects farms were getting funded, and the premise was, well, if you can feed them this stuff that's wasted, you can create a protein, and that's sustainable because that sort of loop keeps feeding itself, and ipso facto we have a thing, and look at you go, you've saved the world. The reality was, because I was approaching this as a producer, I just kept looking at it going, I've just created a big feedlot. So if I've make this big maggot factory, what's the difference logistically to a feedlot? The cost of transporting all this waste, which is my food, will be as impactful on my business and the cost of operations as transporting wheat is to any other commercialised industrial farming system. And so I haven't solved anything. My only innovation is I'm using maggots, which like that can't be an innovation. And so for me, it was actually realising that if we were going to address systemic issues in our supply chain and actually meaningfully contribute to them, then we can't actually replicate what we have done. We have to find ways to innovate within that. And so I invented what is essentially a maggot feedlot, but it's a maggot robot, so it farms insects autonomously, and so that way I could unlock distribution. So it's the equivalent of, instead of bringing the wheat to the cattle or the soy to the cattle or whatever, we take the maggots to the food waste, and that way the feedlot is now able to unlock any waste wherever it's created, or as close to where it's created as possible, which inherently changes the dynamics of accessibility and availability, and we can make as much protein as we like.
So as I listen to both of you, I mean, it's very clear that creativity played an enormous role in both of these models. I'm sure as a kid, you could not have fathomed that would be what you would be doing. And then, I think about the courage that it took to really launch something like that. I'm sure when you were starting to speak to this early on and looking for investors, there were probably people that looked at you like you had three heads. And then I think, that early collaboration. So, talk us through that a little bit. What was going on in the early years of this work? Because anytime there's somebody that's innovating, that's a pioneer, I mean, it's lonely when you're out in front, and you were out in front.
Yeah. Courage is interesting. I get to tell the toilet story now.
Oh, no.
So good. Courage is an interesting thing. It's, I don't have it as a tool I can draw on. I have an inability to not sort of let something go, which was aggravating when I was 16 and is now important at 40 plus. And so, we can go around in circles around what it takes, but the reality is what it takes is the give a shit factor, the care, the concern for the agenda, the investment or the belief in what you're trying to do has to supersede fear. And so your desire to climb a mountain, win the war, do the thing has to outweigh the constant challenge of standing sort of at that boundary of your own confidence, because in this world every day you're being asked to step over that boundary, and that's an intense feeling to sit in every day, and it pushes and creates all of those challenges around imposter syndrome and am I enough, will I be enough, can I be enough? And ironically, the process of creating new technology and then asking someone to fund it, they actually come at you from two separate angles. So you can sit in your workshop and go, I made a thing and it works. And then you can take that tech to an office somewhere and go, see, now we're fixed and it's sorted, just need 20 million, please. And that person goes, I can't even start to believe in the world that you've imagined, and I don't know how to get on this train that you've created. And then you have to go home and go, I don't know how to get someone to believe what I believe, because I was part of the process of designing it and building it, and so that belief has built over time. But now in 30 minutes, I have to take that experience and that pain and that process, and I have to shove it somehow into language that I don't understand so that this person with all this money can get on this train with me. And that, I think, courage is what ends up, is a symptom of your inability to not go through that process because of how strongly you believe in what you've built.
That's an interesting way to frame it. As I listen to you, I think about all of the entrepreneurs and innovators, so many that would have been on these stages over the last few days that have to go through that imposter syndrome and the naysayer that's in our head. Sometimes the biggest critic is the one that's between our own two ears. What did you find with that, Michael? I mean, here you guys were a news organization that suddenly have now spun out this incredible funding platform. As you were sort of stepping towards that and thinking through how you were going to build out that team, what was that scaffolding that you put around yourself as you were launching that?
I think it was really just trying to engage with as many people as we possibly could to learn as much as we could. I think it's important to recognise that we're in a really difficult funding market at the moment, really, really difficult. And entrepreneurs like Olympia who, walk through walls to get their business up and try and achieve funding is really what investors are looking for. It's about, am I going to be able to trust this person when things get hard to be able to push through? The sector that we operate in, it's obviously software is a big part of it, but when we're talking about technologies like Olympia, is that you've got to wrestle with problems. You've got to get your arms around them, and you've got to wrestle with them for a long, long time before you solve these problems. That has two effects. One is that you've got to live through multiple funding cycles because it takes time, but it also means that it's very, very hard to be caught because anyone who wants to do the same thing has to experience the same problems and walk through the same walls. So it means that if you can get to the point where Olympia now is, where she's looking to raise money to really go to the next level, take her business to the next level, having proven it out, she's got clear air behind her. There is no one that's going to be able to catch her. And if she raises that money, and I truly hope and I think she will, no one's going to catch her, and she will have a solution that will be valuable globally. So those sort of entrepreneurs are the types of people that we really try to engage with, really learn as much as we can from them, and we've just tried to build our portfolio based on that interaction.
Well, you two are amazing, and I wish we had more time. And so find these two amazing souls. They are a wealth of knowledge, both on the professional side, but also on the personal side, because I think it takes extraordinary characteristics and traits to lead as you both have been leading. So thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Thanks, Robin. Thank you.
Thank you.